I'd like to tell you a little bit about my favorite teacher, Mr. Cappucci, who teaches math at Scarsdale High School in Scarsdale, New York. I was in his class 25 years ago and recently reestablished email contact with him. I was so surprised to hear that he's still teaching, but it made me so happy too, because he's such a fabulous teacher, and that if he's been teaching for more than 25 years, that means that there's thousands and thousands of students that he's taught. I wanted to make this videotape as a public tribute to a remarkable teacher. I thanked him by email for his teaching. I had him for 2 years, and he played an influential role in my choosing to become an educator myself. So I thought I'd put together a little videotape, maybe put it on the internet, maybe send the school a copy of this video on a DVD for the school's library, and paint a portrait of this teacher, his teaching style, and so that people would have a good idea of who this person is and how he touched so many different lives. I had Mr. Cappucci for 11th grade math, which was pre-calculus and trigonometry, and I also had him for second year for advanced placement calculus BC, which was the most difficult math class in the school. And I have to admit, I wasn't such a strong math student, but Mr. Cappucci made me a pretty strong math enthusiast by the time I had finished his classes. I loved math and I was good at math. These are some of the things I remember about him. I remember how Mr. Cappucci used to walk into class every day. He'd walk in proud and upbeat. It was very different from other teachers. Some of my other teachers would actually walk into class with a slouch and a scowl on their face. Mr. Cappucci always upbeat, and he'd walk in with his shoulders up, and I pretty soon learned that I was going to learn a lot more than mathematics in Mr. Cappucci's class, because I was able to see a teacher exhibit many of the best practices in teaching. I remember his sense of humor. His sense of humor was so silly and so funny, and the way he delivered his lines was funny. He used to, when he handed out a test, everybody in the class was always apprehensive, and he would come up with these funny lines, like he would say, "Class, I've handed out the test. Now I want you to remember something very important." He says, "I want you to remember that there's always strength in numbers." And he would say that joke with a twinkle in his eye, and I always used to laugh. I thought it was just hilarious. He had another joke he used to say. He handed out the test and he goes, "Class, I want you to always remember." No, he used to say this. He used to say, "Class, I want you to go forth and multiply." And I thought that was hilarious. I'd sit there and I'd be kind of laughing and giggling to myself as I started the test. And then he also used to have these different techniques in his teaching where he would address an individual in the class on a kind of personal level, right in the middle of teaching. I was on the cross-country and track teams. So right in the middle of him teaching something on calculus, he'd turn around and say, "Phil, I hear there's a track meet or a cross-country meet today. I hope you're going to win. I hope our team's going to win. What do you think?" And I was always embarrassed to be addressed like that in class, but it was very, very effective in making me pay attention. And it was just rare that teachers took a kind of personal interest in what students were about, and that was one of his teaching techniques that I remember to this day. I remember once a friend of mine, Natalie Norris, who's now married, and Natalie Norris Mullen, she was sitting in the back of the class, and Mr. Cappucci called on her one day, and he either forgot her last name or he pretended like he forgot her last name. And he said, when she raised her hand, he says, "Natalie," and then he pretended like he didn't know her last name, and he goes, "What's your last name? What's your last name?" "Natalie Smart Person," is what he said. And to this day, I call her Natalie Smart Person, and she had to live with that title that he came up with on that day. It was just delightful. I don't know if it was done on purpose or not on purpose, but he kind of hit it on the head. Natalie was a smart person, and she was sitting there in the back of class, I remember. And it was just an interesting technique that he had used as a teacher. I remember when his former students used to come back to visit in class. And that happened pretty often, like once a month or once every other month. There'd be a student in college who'd come back and visit him and thank him. And he always used to take out time from his class. And he always used to say, "This is one of my best students." I always suspected whether that was true or not true, but that's what he used to say. And people invariably came back and they're grateful, and that didn't happen in other classes. You didn't see in other classes students coming back on a regular basis thanking a teacher for their teaching. So Mr. Cappucci really was in a category of his own in his teaching style. I remember also when he was teaching conic sections, he used to do the art, these three-dimensional, I guess, or he used to use different colored chalk. He used to put these diagrams up on the blackboard, and he used to do it with such loving care. And I wondered to myself, I say, why does he care so much about the art? I mean, this math, these curves that he's putting up on the blackboard. And it just occurred to me that the reason he cared about it looking so good was that it was going to help us learn. And sometimes at the end of class, I would say, he would pick up the eraser and go and erase what he'd done. And it felt to me as if he was like an artist, that if I had a digital camera back then, I would have taken a photo to preserve it. It just seemed too precious to erase. That was the quality of his art. One of the other techniques that he used to use was after he handed out a test, an exam that we were going to be taking in class, he would sometimes come around and ask the students, right in the middle of the exam, he would ask them on a personal level, how's the test going? And that seemed like such an unusual thing, because teachers usually, when they hand you the test, then you're kind of on your own. But the fact that he would intrude into your personal space, intrude in a positive way, I thought that was it was just different. I liked it. Even when he was like disturbing me in my test, I was trying to concentrate, he'd come over and he'd say, "How's it going?" It just showed a level of concern that was rare for teachers to have. And it showed that he was he had a reputation as being one of the best teachers in the school, and it was a deserved reputation. I remember in 11th grade when on the first day of school, when I found out that I was assigned to him for math, the feeling for me was almost like Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. The moment when he opens up the candy bar and there's a little golden, he got the little golden sticker or something that means he was going to go on a tour of the factory. That's how it felt when I found out that I was going to be in Mr. Cappucci's class. And then after the first year, I didn't get too many strong grades. I was mostly a B student in pre-calculus, and I was a B student in calculus also. But Mr. Cappucci knew that I wanted to follow a career in math or science or engineering, and he recommended that I take his more advanced class, the Calculus BC. And I have to admit, it was a little bit, I was swimming in water that was deeper than I could swim. But I liked the challenge, and I appreciated the trust that he had back then. He used to assign so much homework, I can't believe it, 2 to 3 hours of homework a night for Calculus BC. But it never seemed to be like a chore. I mean, it was difficult and time consuming, but I always loved to do it. And if there was another teacher that gave me 2 hours of homework, it would be pretty rare that I would be happy about doing that kind of quantity of work.